guys, I have a question. I was thinking about this, um, and maybe like I got caught looking at something that wasn't real. You see something about Mike Sainristil being converted to a DB? Did you guys see that?
No.
Like you,
I did. I can't elaborate on it. We had our guy Justin Rowe on a few days ago. We talked. We went through the offense, and he mentioned it that there's talk in camp that I don't want to get this wrong. Yeah, that's about all I can say is that I don't remember exactly what was stated, and he didn't have much on it either. But yeah, that's what I heard.
Hmm.
interesting. Hey, new defensive coordinator. Um, Sainristil definitely had a role on the offense. Not saying that that would change. I mean, he could definitely play both ways. Um, Especially if he is playing in nickel. So certain packages he'll be on the field, some he won't. Um, but I don't know. It got me thinking like, hmm, is this a neg? Is this a good sign that maybe they see something in this kid that his skills are can be better utilized, or he can be a hidden weapon somehow playing the nickel on defense, or is that a possible indictment on our current secondary and we're trying to find internal on campus solutions. We already know that this defense is going to go through a pretty big overhaul. So it was definitely one of those, I wonder.
I mean, I don't think he's gonna play both ways. I think that is absolutely not gonna happen. It's just so rare for a player to do that that I think you have to be just an absolute special athlete where we don't have a choice. We have to put you on the field. But for Sanderson, if according to mgoblue.com, he's a senior. Like this is an odd time to move him to DB. I mean, if unless he is going to start at nickel, I mean, you always want to do what's best for the team, but
Right.
that's an odd time to move going into your senior year. And I get it. Michigan has a good amount of receivers as far as guys that are on pretty similar level, and then Ronnie Bell's probably that alpha in that room. But man, that I just I don't know. That's a tough move to make for a guy going into his senior year.
I find interesting that you brought up Ronnie Bell, and by all means, we all feel bad for him. What happened. Thought he was due for a big season, and team had a great season without him. But you know, anytime you're the star or the go-to guy on your team, and you get hurt the first game of the season, I believe, and then the team goes throughout the whole season, and guys step up, and you come back, it's like, well, where do you fit now? We saw last year, the emergence of Andrew Anthony, right? We saw um Cornelius Johnson, solidify himself as the number two option, or he tried to be the number one option at times. Sanders still making plays. We saw gosh, why am I drawing a blank? He did the reverse for us.
Was
Can't
that Henning? AJ Henning?
Yes, AJ Henning. Thank you, AJ Henning. It'll be interesting to see um what how does Ronnie Bell, fit into this offense, and what role does he really play in the fall?
Yeah, I think the thing that's different with Ronnie though is we still, I mean, of the guys that you mentioned, none of them emerged as the number one guy.
I
You
agree with
know,
that. Sure,
it was,
flashes.
Andrell was in the Michigan State game, like, holy cow, we've got a player there. And it just guys would just flash here and there. There wasn't
Right,
anyone who consistently every single week was, a 9 catch guy or a 100 yard guy. It was,
right,
and also too that goes to the play calling of just how the offense was last year, and that's
right.
fine. But to me, there was just never that guy that emerged as the number one when Ronnie went down. And I also look at Cade and how he played. And granted, it was a different level of competition, but in that game that early on in the season, he was willing to take the deep shots with Ronnie early on, where he wasn't willing to do that with anybody until, I mean, midway through the season, really late in the
It was
season.
so young too, though, Des. Like it was
True.
a lot of inexperience, and I think Ronnie was barely, you know, deep by a pretty wide margin, the most experienced guy.
Mhm.
So yeah, that makes sense that Cade probably put a bit more faith. And of course, Gaddis and Harbaugh, being able to make those certain calls, absolutely. Like I think the only touchdown that Ronnie had versus Western was a go route, wasn't it? And I think
Yeah, he ran like a
it was
slot fade.
like a
Yep.
slot fade,
And Cade
and
threw it up. I mean, he
it was
gave him,
perfect, perfectly thrown ball,
mhm.
perfectly thrown ball. But no, to your point, that's a good observation. It was really like the longest pass they did for a long time until they
Mhm.
kind of found other guys to step up. So that's a good point. Maybe Ronnie Bell just slides back in, and he is that number one option. Because I think one guy, and we both said this either on stream or off stream. I thought Cornelius Johnson really was that guy that they wanted to step up and kind of solidify himself as a potential number one option, and he never quite did it last year.
Mhm.
Like he would have drops. He just wasn't consistent. And he was like one of those guys that he would flash a little bit. Same thing with Andrew Anthony. And I know he was young, a freshman, I think. It's just maybe that's what Ronnie Bell, in his 6th year, you know, really shows himself.
It'd be awesome because if Michigan can put together, the type of run game and maybe not as dominant as they were last year, but even close to that, plus having a game breaker like Ronnie Bell on the outside, that can make this offense really dangerous and potentially, a more aggressive pass game as far as when you do throw it. I mean, that could be a pretty dangerous combination.
Absolutely.
And I
This
think we
offense
are.
should be this
Go.
offense should be top three especially in the Big Ten. But I definitely think top scoring in the conference,
Yep.
not conference. Excuse me, country. They should be one of the most prolific. If everything goes correctly, they should be that prolific offensively. They really should.
Agreed. Agreed. Shout out to Antoine Johnson with the super chat. It says Michigan should change the recruiting focus to offensive and defensive line, while Ohio is trying to finesse. We could certainly sell this to recruits. I think that's a good point, and I think you definitely could do that.
But that's when Michigan was at their best. When they were constantly sent, especially at the tackle position. They had like the Jake Longs of the world. Taylor Lewan. Uh, Jeff Backus. We're constantly sending John Jansen. They're constantly sending first round NFL tackles to the NFL. Right, that's what Michigan's at its best. So I definitely agree with the offensive line. That we really need to hamper down on getting those 5-star kids here. And we got to do a better job identifying those kids in our own state. I mean, now I'm a Central Michigan alum, Fire Up Chips, and now I think his name is Runeman. They're about to have another kid at the tackle position that's going to be a first round pick. And we're just, I think, about 8-7 years removed from sending Eric Fisher uh, to the NFL as a left tackle, first overall pick. The reason I bring up Central Michigan first round tackles is because if Central Michigan can find first round tackles in the state of Michigan, the University of Michigan should definitely be finding them. And as much as I am proud of I'm a proud alum of Central Michigan University. I know that it's much more realistic for Michigan to have the type of results that I want to see as a fan. So um, they got to do a better job of recruiting there. And defensive line wise, case in point this past year,
Hmm.
your best player was on the defensive line. You
Yep.
know, the best.
And you got, guys in the league, Brandon Graham, Mo Hurst, Taco Charlton. You've put guys in the league, at that spot. Rashawn
Chris
Gary's playing
Langley,
really well for the
Quiddy
Packers.
Payne. No,
Chase
Winovich.
Winovich. Yep.
That they really, yes, they really need to continue to get better at that position. I think that's an area where the consistency, not that we ever had spurts here and there, but the consistency compared to Michigan in their heyday hasn't quite been there, and that's something they can get better at for sure. I mean, for God's sake, for Sean Gary, I mean, yeah, he was a great recruit in terms of ranking, but he's really just starting to come into his own now in the NFL, and good for him that he is. But yeah, I agree. I agree with Antoine that we're not going to out recruit Ohio State in terms of skill positions. It's just not going to happen. That's their wheelhouse. And quite frankly, they had the right play caller for it. They have the cachet. They have the resume in terms of players recently that's in the NFL. And they have the also just the eye test. If you're a receiver, you're looking at Michigan play and then you're looking at Ohio State play. You're like, yeah, I think I'm going to play for that team in Columbus. Like it just makes sense. Well, if you're a 5-star receiver, why would you want to go to Michigan? It sounds bad. People may think I'm a traitor saying that. I'm objectively speaking. You know, why would you do that? So if you're a running back, like I don't see why if you are a great running back, to me, there's two schools you should want to play for. If you're in the Midwest, Michigan and Wisconsin. If you're a great running back, but that's just me.
It's true.